How y'all doing, folks? Welcome to this week's Outdoors Bound podcast. I'm George Noleff.
Oh.
Let her do what she wants to.
Oh, ho, ho. Oh my.
Know what that sound is? That's the sound of a big striped bass being caught out in the Chesapeake Bay. Stripers are Virginia state saltwater fish, and this is the time of year trophies are swimming into the bay. No harvest, but they are fun to catch. Now, there's concern about a dip in Atlantic striped bass numbers, and last week, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, those are the folks who set saltwater fishing regs along the Atlantic seaboard, well, they took some action. They set some pretty strict harvest and slot limits. There is nothing more iconic on the Chesapeake than a trophy striper on the end of a line.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
But that's a scene that could be in big trouble.
We really need to act now to make some changes so that the situation doesn't grow any worse.
That's Maryland DNR Fishing and Boating Services Director Lynn Fagley. Maryland and Virginia share the Chesapeake Bay, and the Chesapeake is the primary spawning ground for Atlantic stripers. 70 to 90% of all striped bass are born in the Chesapeake. Here's Alex McRickard of the VDWR.
Then our larger migratory fish that have come in to spawn are going to make their way out of the Chesapeake Bay in the latter part of the spring and ultimately chase cold water and food sources up the Atlantic coast.
Although the spawning biomass is below the level we'd like to see it, there's still plenty of fish out there to create a strong year class. We are not back at the levels that we were in 1985 before we went to a moratorium.
That moratorium lasted into the 90s, and that allowed striper numbers to rebound to some of their highest levels ever. So, when numbers were swinging, the ASFMC put a plan into place to restore striper numbers to mid-90s levels by 2029. But recent research shows that overfishing and poor spawns have put that goal almost out of reach.
You want to keep reeling?
Reel down.
So the ASMFC has adopted emergency restrictions that reduce commercial harvest quotas by 7% and implement a 19 to 24-inch slot harvest limit on the Chesapeake with a 1 fish a day bag limit. Same bag limit on the Atlantic and a 28 to 31-inch slot limit there. The idea is to protect breeder-aged fish, especially the 2015 year class, which was the last good spawn, so that we can have more scenes like this in the future.
He's in the net.
We've had about 6 straight years with weak spawns, and that's a big factor in that drop. Those weak spawns coincided with some mild winters. Biologists think we need cold, snowy winters to create the best spawning conditions, especially when it comes to the timing of the forage hatches baby striped bass depend on. It's a water temperature thing, folks. Those forage hatches have been happening too early, and by the time the baby stripers hatch, there's not enough food. Here's Maryland DNR Fishing and Boating Services Director Lynn Fagley.
Striped bass in the Chesapeake rely on cold, wet winters. They really need that freshwater flow, the snowpack melt, in order to set up conditions for a good spawn. Once the baby fish hatch, there's particular food sources that they like to eat as very, very small fish. And what scientists are starting to understand is that changes in flow due to dry winters may be creating a mismatch between when the baby fish hatch and when their food is available. And what that would do is really minimize survival of those baby fish because they just don't have food to eat. So it's very complex. There's no simple answers. The environment has a big role to play. We have to contend with Mother Nature, but we do hope that if we can bolster the spawning stock, if the environment, if the climate, if the weather cooperates and we get a nice cold, wet winter, hopefully we'll see a good spawn in the spring.
So what's the outlook? At least in the near term for this winter, we asked WFXR meteorologist Kara Thompson.
For the most part, usually as we trend towards the end of January into February, that's when we're looking at our coldest temperatures, at least for southwest and central Virginia. However, it does look like we could see either near average or just above average temperatures returning, especially as we head more so later into February. And definitely by the time we head into March, maybe we won't be seeing as many cold days ahead.
So, cold recently, warmer now, but anything to keep water temps colder longer, like another cold snap, well, that would help in terms of striped bass. Now, speaking of winter fishing, this is the time of year to target walleyes on the New and the Stanton. Those fish stack up at river barriers like Foster Falls on the New or Leesville Dam on the Stanton. You can fish them from a boat or the shore pretty easy, too. You can throw jerk baits or jigs tipped with twister tails or minnows or just float minnows. I got to do a winter trip at Foster Falls to find out more about this prime winter fishery.
22.
22?
Yeah.
This is a fish tale,
It's a good one, too.
but it sounds more like a fairy tale because it involves heroes and giants and mysteries and adventures. And the key to this story is a fish called the walleye. Walleye are a game fish, a member of the perch family. Really popular in the Great Lakes region, the Midwest, and Canada. A lot of folks don't realize we have them here in Virginia. In fact, the walleye we have here are pretty special. They're natives of the New River, and that New River strain of fish is so unique, you can't find them anywhere else on the planet. Now, here's where the mystery comes in. We didn't know we were dealing with something that special until relatively recently.
The New River apparently had a unique strain historically that went undiscovered until some research was done on walleye populations here in Claytor Lake in the late 70s through Virginia Tech.
That guy, his name's John Copeland, he's one of the heroes in this fish tale. John's a biologist with the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources. Without folks like John, this story doesn't have a happy ending. You see, he's one of the people entrusted with making sure our unique New River strain of walleye thrives.
And since 2000, we've worked with that strain of walleye through a selective breeding program where we go out and collect broodstock in the spring on the spawning run in the New River, and then we raise young in a hatchery from those unique genetic strains. And when we have unique genetics like that, we want to maintain those for the future.
And then there's Wes Billings. He's one of the good guys, too. VDWR conservation officer, Wes grew up fishing the New River. Its walleyes are one of his passions.
We've been actively collecting broodstock during the spring here on the New River, doing some genetic testing to ensure that they are the native strain of walleye, and taking them to some of our hatcheries, and create and fry and bring them back and stock them.
The New River is already a pretty unique place. It's the second oldest river in the world, believe it or not. It was cutting through the Appalachian Mountains when the Appalachians were the size of the Rockies. And speaking of size, when it comes to New River strain walleye, that's what sets them apart from all other walleyes in the world. They get big, they're bruisers. In fact, the biggest walleye ever caught in the state of Virginia, the state record, caught right here in the New River.
There's a lot of bruisers in the population, yes.
Bruisers?
This particular strain of walleye produces a lot of big fish. The current state record is over 15 pounds and came from the New River. The historic record of 23.5 pounds was from the New River. So the New River sets records for walleye sizes, and we know that's a unique characteristic of that strain of walleye.
Now get this, some walleye experts, we're talking tournament anglers and biologists, think the New River, because of the genetics and Virginia's climate, could produce a new world record walleye.
Nice one.
That would be a fish in excess of 25 pounds. Well, that would grab headlines. The way this story has a happy ending is for the New River strain, Virginia's native walleye, to multiply and live on into the future.
It's a great sport fish. It's a fish that takes some skill to catch. I think there's 40 plus strains of walleye, and actually I think we've identified one native strain to be a New River strain, which is kind of neat for here.
So that's an important part of the work that I do, is to maintain and conserve populations of fish that are unique to Virginia and specifically the New River where I do my work.
Here's a tip for you. One of my favorite rigs for those winter river walleyes is one I learned to use fishing walleye runs up in Ohio. That is a Carolina rigged floating jig head tipped with a twister tail. I like chartreuse or pink. Now you have your main line attached to a foot of 20-pound mono that connects to a quarter or half-ounce trolling sinker. Then you run a 3 to 6 foot length of 10-pound floor off that sinker. That runs to your jig. You toss it upstream, let it bounce down. If it stops, set the hook. It's either going to be a snag or a fish. If it starts to swim, you know what to do. For From fishing to hunting, a lot of you might be hunting small game like rabbits and squirrels or game birds like grouse, and check the seasons on those. But if you put your hunting gear away after deer, bear, and fall turkey wound up, this is a good time to take an extra inventory. I know a lot of you have a pretty good handle on things, but while we've got some downtime, it never hurts to take another look. That way, when spring gobbler comes around, you'll be ready to get you one. Of course, on the subject of getting you one, two Virginia agencies, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Wildlife Resources, would love it if you got yourself a blue catfish. There's a push on to harvest eater-sized blues in the tidal James to help keep their biomass under control. It's a delicate dance to ensure the trophy fishes are there to sustain the sport fishery while keeping numbers in check. I recently got to experience that James River trophy fishery. A day in the life of a trophy blue cat captain starts before sunrise. There's bait to be caught.
This time of the year, you know, that size fish right there will yield about 3 to 4 pieces of bait.
And rigs to be tied.
Get your finger out of there. Kind of waiting for this tide to start coming in, which I think it is coming in. You're just not seeing it on the surface because of this wind direction.
And then there's the matter of finding fish. Fortunately, on a world-class fishery like the tidal James River, that does not take long.
It's a little 25-pound blue to get the day started.
Adam Cook of Nautical Pride Charters makes his living chasing the giants of the James, blue catfish.
Sometimes they will breach out of the water just like a marlin would. I mean, it's really a sight to see. These fish are very athletic. When they get above 30 pounds, they are the biggest and baddest fish that swims in North America. Right in the corner of the mouth where you want to see it.
Cook's livelihood depends on trophy blues, but blue catfish are not natives, and their numbers are exploding, having an impact on the biology and ecology of the James. That's forced fishery managers into a delicate balancing act, preserving a trophy fishery worth tens of millions of dollars while trying to control numbers of smaller fish to keep the biomass where it should be.
We're not looking to, push the population way down. We just want to get it under control so that we can support our fisheries and we can still, protect our native species that we love.
Among other things, that means encouraging harvest of smaller blue cats.
They're really tasty, and if you haven't tried them already, I would encourage folks to try it. They're surprisingly good.
Decent one. Close to 30.
Fewer blue cats also mean bigger blue cats. With less competition, the blue catfish in the river can grow larger, keeping trophy guides like Cook in business.
It's a great experience for families, kids, and people that just overall, enjoy the tug of a trophy class fish.
Oh, tugging now. Wow.
A big part of the job of keeping that fishery balanced falls to DWR tidal fisheries biologist Margie Whitmore. We talked with her about blue cats as well as what it takes to manage a tidal fishery.
So basically what I do is I kind of run research and monitoring for all of Virginia's tidal waters. And so that is our annual monitoring programs, like our community fish sampling, where we do, complete fish sampling, all species across all tidal rivers every fall. We also do our catfish monitoring every summer. It's predominantly blue catfish that we get, and that's rotating 2 rivers every other year. So we get all rivers every 2 years.
And you've got a variety of species you're looking out for.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of my time is taken up with blue catfish because they are very abundant, and we are managing that species and doing research on them and monitoring takes up a lot of time. I also work a lot with sport fish, so I work a lot with largemouth bass in the James and the Chickahominy. As everybody knows, the Chickahominy is a strong bass fishery, attracts anglers from all over. So that takes a bit of time. But I'm also working a lot with some of our native and naturalized species. So our gar and our bowfin, and just kind of getting baseline numbers on those guys. And recently I also started a blue catfish movement project where we're tagging blue catfish and we're using receivers to track where they're going in the James and Chickahominy rivers.
And when we talk about tidal, that should explain it, but it's where you actually have some tide movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the James River, that is everything below the fall line. So, everything changes depending on precipitation and tides, but generally you can think of tidal fresh being, around like Presqu'île and up, and more oligohaline kind of brackishy waters down to Hog Island, and, saltier there, more like mesohaline until the Chesapeake Bay. So all of that changes depending on, precipitation and, just different weather events, offshore storms, wind, tides. So that changes a lot, but generally that's kind of the breakdown.
And I know that we talked about blue catfish a little bit before. A big push on to eat them right now, and they're tasty, right?
They are very tasty, yeah. So a lot of people think of catfish as a bottom feeder, but they actually start eating fish at pretty small sizes, and so they taste like a really good white fish. So they're really good in fish tacos. They're really good just in a cast iron pan over a campfire. Very versatile, and if you haven't tried them yet, you should give them a whirl.
Margie, I thank you so much for being with us today. Margie Whitmore, the tidal fisheries biologist for VDWR. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
If you harvest a blue cat, I can tell you it's worth it. The eater-sized blues are tasty and the fillets are big. Nothing wrong with that. All of us could probably use a little more calm in our lives, so every week we're going to give you a chance to unwind with a soundtrack from nature. It's something we call 30 Seconds of Solitude. Sure hope you enjoyed that whitewater lullaby from Balcony Falls on the James River. On that note, folks, let's wrap it up. Thanks for being with us. Until next week, I'm George Noleff of WFXR's Outdoors Bound. Tight lines and good hunting, y'all.
You build the mountains in your dreams. You lead the world so you can breathe. Whoa. You walk on fields inside your mind. You cross the oceans and the skies. Whoa. It's like you found a better way. Don't fight them all on what they say. Just turn around and walk away. But if you leave again, just take me there with you. But if you leave again, just take me there with you. I wanna live this land with you. Touch the grass and feel brand